I jokingly said last week, as a complete joke, okay, this was just hypothetically, completely kidding, that when talking about Neil deGrasse Tyson's 6,500 light years Crab Nebula example. So Neil deGrasse Tyson on Cosmos, the new series on Fox, said, you know, we kind of have proof that the universe is more than 6,000 years old because the Crab Nebula is 6,500 light years away, and we wouldn't be able to see anything that's further away if the universe were less than 6,500 years old. I jokingly said, you know, maybe conservatives or the religious right will say, how do we really know the speed of light? I mean, we could be deceived by God about the speed of light. I jokingly said it, and this has actually happened. There's a group called Answers in Genesis. Their website is answersingenesis.com, and they're making this exact argument. They say, this is a quote, "What Tyson, of course, doesn't address in the program is that young Earth creation scientists do offer biblically consistent models to explain how we see faraway objects in space without tampering with the laws of physics. One such model is the anisotropic synchrony convention, which is based on the fact, as Einstein recognized," remember, mentioning Einstein apparently gives you credibility, "that it is impossible to objectively measure the one-way speed of light. We instead measure the round-trip speed of light and simply agree that the one-way speed must be half of the total. Read more about how this explanation would answer the question of how light from distant stars could reach Earth within the time allowed in biblical history in, quote, distant starlight. And for more technically minded readers, anisotropic synchrony convention, a solution to the distant starlight problem." So what's the problem with this theory? In layman's terms, the idea is, okay, we're assuming that light travels at the same speed in one direction that it does in the opposite direction. But we don't really know that. We don't know that. It might be traveling one way faster, and then we're just dividing by two and assuming it's the same in both directions. The problem is, as is the case with almost every single one of these types of arguments, the problem is that it depends on non-falsifiable claims made mostly in this kind of hypothetical, philosophical sense. There is no actual evidence that would suggest light travels at a different speed in one direction than it does in the other. It's hypothetically possible, that's true, but there is absolutely no evidence for it. The idea was initially published in a creationist journal called Answers Research Journal in September 2010, and it says, without violating any known laws of nature, we could view special relativity as if there is one-way infinite light speed. However, there is absolutely no evidence of this. In both cases, when we look at the argument made in the Answers Research Journal and the argument made by Answers in Genesis, you create needlessly more complex calculations. And if we think that both the simplest explanation is typically the correct one, and that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, as Carl Sagan himself suggested, there is a completely ad hoc nature to this theory. So, I was completely joking when I said, next thing you know, creationists will say, well, we might be deceived, we might not really know the speed of light. I think that it is absolutely astounding that this is now being presented as an actual theory. And I'm not taking any credit at all for predicting that this would happen. I was completely joking, and it turns out that